He glanced at her name tag, then at her scuffed shoes, and sneered. To Harrison Sterling, the waitress standing in front of him wasn't a person. She was just another prop in his show of wealth and dominance. He thought that by switching to an obscure, aristocratic dialect of French, he could humiliate her in front of his date. He thought he was clever. He was wrong. He had no idea that the woman holding his menu wasn't just a waitress, and that the few words she was about to speak would not only silence the table, but turn his entire world upside down. This was Arrogance meeting its match. Inside Laroni, Manhattan's most ostentatious French bistro, the air smelled of truffle oil, expensive perfume, and old money. For Sarah Bennett, though, it mostly smelled like exhaustion. She adjusted the waistband of her black slacks, held together by a hidden safety pin beneath her crisp white apron. It was 8:15 p.m. on a Friday, and the dinner rush was peaking. A cacophony of clinking crystal and murmured conversations, each costing more per minute than Sarah earned in a week, filled the room. Table 4 needed water. Table 7 wanted to send the sea bass back because it looked sad. Move, Bennett. Move. The hiss came from Charles Henderson, the floor manager. Henderson believed that sweating was a sign of incompetence and was hovering near the host stand, pretending to wipe a smudge off a leather menu. On it, Charles, Sarah said, keeping her head low. She grabbed a carafe of iced water, ignoring the sharp pain stabbing through her left arch. 9 hours on her feet had done that. Her shoes, generic, non-slip, bought from a discount store in Queens, were falling apart. Sarah Bennett was 26. To the patrons of Laroni, she was nothing more than a silhouette in black and white, the hand that refilled the wine, the voice that recited specials, the buffer for complaints. They didn't see the dark circles she carefully concealed with drugstore concealer. They didn't know that 3 years ago, she had been a doctoral candidate in comparative linguistics at the Seine in Paris, one of the brightest in her cohort, until a phone call changed everything. Her father had suffered a stroke. Medical bills had devoured their savings. She left Paris overnight, trading the library for a tray and the lecture hall for the noisy dining room, doing whatever it took to keep her father in care. Sarah snapped back to the present. VIPs were walking in table 1, the best view. Don't mess this up. Through the heavy oak doors, the host, a trembling teen named Kevin, bowed quietly as a couple entered. The man walked first. Tall, wearing a navy bespoke suit stretched just slightly across the shoulders to show off his gym routine. His face was magazine handsome but cruel in motion, scanning the room as if measuring everyone around him. Harrison Sterling. Sarah knew the name from credit card receipts. Hedge fund manager. Headlines weren't about returns, but about aggressive, hostile takeovers. New money desperately trying to look like old money. The woman behind him looked like she wanted to be anywhere else. Stunning in a deep red dress, her arms crossed, her posture closed off. Jessica, though Sarah didn't know her name yet, looked nervous. Right this way, Mr. Sterling, Kevin squeaked. Harrison ignored him, striding straight to table 1, the prime spot by the floor-to-ceiling window overlooking the city lights. He sat, spreading his legs, claiming the space. Sarah drew a deep breath and smoothed her apron. Just get through the shift, she told herself. Rent is due Tuesday. Dad needs his physical therapy. She approached the table, her face composed into the practiced mask of polite servitude. Good evening, she said, her voice soft and professional. Welcome to Laroni. My name is Sarah, and I'll be taking care of you tonight. Harrison didn't look up. He was too busy inspecting the silverware, flipping a fork in the light as if checking for imperfections. Sparkling water, he said, not even glancing at her. And bring the wine list. The reserve list, not the one you give the tourists. Of course, sir, Sarah said, glancing at the woman beside him. And for you, miss? Jessica offered a small, apologetic smile. Just still water, please. Thank you. Harrison finally looked up. His eyes didn't meet her face. They traveled down to her cheap shoes, then lingered on her hands, red from carrying hot plates. A sneer curled at his lip. In his mind, he had already placed her at the very bottom of his social hierarchy. "Wait," he called just as Sarah turned to leave. "Yes, sir?" "Make sure the glass is actually clean this time," he said, loud enough for the neighboring table to hear. "Last time I was here, the stemware was foggy. It's hard to get good help these days, isn't it?" Sarah felt heat rise to her cheeks but forced her expression into a neutral mask. "I will personally inspect the glasses, sir. You do that?" He dismissed her with a wave, like swatting a fly. As she walked away, she heard him laugh a dry, barking sound. Then he leaned toward Jessica. "You have to be firm with them, Jess. Otherwise, they walk all over you. It's a power dynamic. You wouldn't understand." At the service station, Sarah's hands trembled slightly as she gripped the counter. "He's a nightmare," whispered Tonia, the bartender, polishing a glass. "He tipped 5% last time and tried to get the valet fired because it was raining." "I can handle him," Sarah said, though a knot of dread tightened in her stomach. She had dealt with rude customers before, but there was something about Harrison Sterling, a predatory glint in his eyes that suggested he was bored. And men like him, when bored, liked to play games with those they considered beneath them. 20 minutes later, the atmosphere at Table 1 had shifted from tense to suffocating. Sarah approached with the appetizers, balancing the heavy tray on one shoulder, her posture perfect despite the ache in her spine. She placed the foie gras in front of Harrison and the salade Laroni in front of Jessica. "Enjoy," she murmured, turning to refill their wine glasses. She carried a 2015 Chateau Margaux, more expensive than her father's monthly care. Harrison held up a hand, stopping her from pouring. He swirled the wine in his glass, sniffing it ostentatiously. "It's corked," he announced. Sarah froze. She knew wine. She had opened that very bottle at the station and smelled the cork herself. It was pristine, perfect. "I apologize, sir," she said gently. "I opened it myself just moments ago. Perhaps it needs a moment to breathe." Harrison slammed his hand on the table, rattling the silverware. The restaurant went quiet for a heartbeat. Jessica flinched. "Are you arguing with me?" Harrison's voice rose an octave. "I said it's corked. Do you know who I am? Do you know how much wine I buy? I don't need a waitress with what is that? A queen's accent telling me about Bordeaux?" He wasn't just complaining. He was performing, trying to assert dominance in front of Jessica, trying to look like a connoisseur by belittling the staff. "I will fetch the sommelier immediately, sir," Sarah said, her voice tight. "No." Harrison smiled a cruel, thin smile. "Don't bother. He's busy with important tables. You can take this back and bring me the menu again. I've lost my appetite for the foie gras. It looks rubbery." Sarah took the plate and the wine back to the kitchen, her face burning. Henry, the chef, a large, genuinely French man, dipped a spoon into the returned sauce. "Rubbery? This man is an imbecile." "The texture is perfect," Sarah muttered, leaning against the stainless steel counter. "He wants a reaction." "Don't give him one," Henry warned. "Henderson is watching. If Sterling makes a scene, Henderson will fire you to save face. We all know it." Sarah nodded. She couldn't lose this job. She needed the tips from tonight. Back at the table, Harrison leaned back, looking pleased with himself. Jessica looked miserable. "I'm sorry about him," Jessica mouthed silently when Harrison glanced at his watch. Sarah gave a tiny nod of acknowledgement. "So," Harrison said, opening the menu without looking at it. He stared directly at Sarah. "I feel like something authentic tonight. But reading these English descriptions is boring. They lack the soul of the dish." He smirked. "Tell me, do you speak French? This is a French restaurant, is it not?" Sarah asked. "I know the menu items, sir." "The menu items," he mocked. "Bonjour, baguette." "Oui, oui." That's about the extent of it for someone like you, I assume. Sarah bit the inside of her cheek. I can help you with any questions you have, sir. I doubt it. Harrison laughed, turning to Jessica. Watch this, babe. You can always tell the quality of an establishment by the education of the staff. Then he turned back to Sarah, eyes gleaming with malice. He took a breath and switched languages. But it wasn't just French. It was a rapid-fire, overly ornate, archaic version, loaded with slang he probably picked up from a semester abroad or a pretentious tutor. He was trying to be difficult on purpose. Harrison sneered, the guttural accent thick and exaggerated. Translation: Listen to me, my little one. I want you to tell the chef. I want the duck, but only if the skin is crispy like glass, and bring me another wine, something that doesn't taste like vinegar. Do you understand? Or am I speaking too fast for your little brain? He sat back, arms crossed, smug grin plastered on his face. He expected her to falter, to stammer, I'm sorry. I don't understand. Then he could roll his eyes and demand a manager fluent in the language of civilization. Jessica looked down at her lap. Humiliated on Sarah's behalf. Harrison, stop it. Just order in English. No, Harrison chuckled, eyes locked on Sarah. It's standard. If she works here, she should know. Look at her, completely lost. Pathetic. Probably wondering if I asked for ketchup. Sarah stood perfectly still. The sounds of the restaurant faded away. She looked at Harrison Sterling, a man who thought money bought intelligence, who thought a suit bought class, and remembered the lecture halls of the Saône. She remembered her thesis on the evolution of aristocratic dialects in 18th century France, the long nights debating philosophy in cafes of the Latin Quarter, professors who had forgotten more about language than Harrison would ever know. She looked at his smug face. The ache in her feet vanished, replaced by a cold, sharp clarity. He wanted a show. She would give him one. She didn't reach for her notepad. She didn't call Henderson. She simply clasped her hands in front of her apron, tilted her head slightly, and locked eyes with him. 3 seconds of silence stretched at the table. Harrison's smile faltered, just slightly. He expected confusion. He didn't expect the icy calm settling over the waitress's face. Sarah opened her mouth. She did not blink. She did not stammer. She adjusted her posture, shifting her weight so she loomed slightly over the seated billionaire. When she spoke, her voice transformed. Gone was the flat, subservient monotone of an American waitress. In its place was the rich, resonant timbre of a woman who had spent 5 years defending dissertations in the hallowed halls of the Sorbonne. She spoke in French, but not just any French. It was exquisite, fluid, high Parisian dialect, enunciated with a precision that made Harrison's attempt sound like a toddler banging on a piano. Translation: Sir, if you wish to use the imperfect subjunctive to impress me, I suggest reviewing your conjugations. Your request for the duck is noted, although comparing its skin to glass is a somewhat clumsy metaphor, generally reserved for bad 19th century poetry. Harrison froze. The fork in his hand hovered halfway to his mouth. His jaw slackened. He understood maybe half of what she said, but the tone, the crushing weight of intellectual superiority, was universal. Sarah wasn't finished. Her gaze shifted to the wineglass he had rejected, her expression a mixture of polite academic pity. Quantova. She continued, slowing slightly, as if speaking to a slow child. Translation: As for the wine, it is not vinegar. It is a 2015 Chateau Margaux. The acidity you detect is the signature of young tannins, which require an educated palate to appreciate. If that is too complex, I would be delighted to bring you a sweet Merlot, something simpler, to match your tastes. The silence that followed was absolute, heavy, physical. At the next table, a silver-haired gentleman lowered his newspaper. The busboy froze mid-step with a pitcher of water. Even Henderson, the manager, stopped polishing menus 20 feet away, sensing a disturbance in the force field of the dining room. Harrison Sterling's face turned a violent shade of crimson. He looked as though he had been slapped. His brain scrambled, trying to process the reversal. The script had been flipped. He was supposed to be the master, she the servant, but in the span of 30 seconds. Using the very weapon he had tried to bludgeon her with. She had stripped him bare. He opened his mouth to retort, to shout, to fire her, but the French words wouldn't come. Switching back to English now would be an admission of defeat. He had started this game. He couldn't flip the board just because he was losing. Then a sound cut through the tension. A short, sharp giggle. Jessica. She clamped a hand over her mouth, eyes wide in horror at her own reaction, but the damage was done. Her gaze shifted from Harrison to Sarah, and for the first time all night, her eyes were alive. She wasn't looking at a waitress anymore. She was looking at a hero. Harrison sputtered. Sarah offered a smile that didn't reach her eyes, a smile terrifyingly polite. She switched effortlessly back to English. "I will put the duck in for you, sir, and I'll bring the Merlot. I think you'll find it much easier to swallow." She gave Jessica a subtle, distinct nod. "Mademoiselle." With a pivot as sharp as a military turn, Sarah walked away from the table. She didn't hurry. She walked with her head held high, tray tucked under her arm, leaving Harrison Sterling drowning in his own embarrassment while the ghost of her perfect French lingered in the air like smoke dot as she reached the safety of the service corridor. The adrenaline that had kept her upright vanished. Her knees buckled. She grabbed the edge of the granite counter at the service station, breath coming in short, jagged gasps. Her hands shook so hard the empty wine glasses on her tray rattled against each other. What have I done? The thought crashed over her. I just insulted a VIP. I humiliated a man who could buy this building. I'm going to be fired. Lose the apartment. Dad's medication. Pride didn't pay the bills. Superior conjugation didn't cover the co-pay for physical therapy. Bennett. The low growl made her jump. She squeezed her eyes shut, then turned. Henderson stood there, face pale, eyes darting to table one where Harrison was aggressively typing on his phone. "What? Did you say that to him?" Henderson hissed, leaning close so the other staff wouldn't hear. He ordered in French. "Charles," Sarah said, voice trembling slightly. I replied in French. "I don't speak French, Bennett," he said, "but I know the tone of an insult when I hear it. That man is worth 400 million. He brings clients here 3 times a week." Henderson ran a hand through his thinning hair. "Did you curse at him?" "No," Sarah said. "I corrected his grammar and told him the wine was too complex for him." Henderson stared at her. A flicker of admiration crossed his face, quickly extinguished by fear. "You have a death wish," he whispered. "Stay in the back. Don't go to that table again. Send Kevin. If Sterling demands to see me, you're done. You understand I can't save you if he decides to make this a war." "I understand," Sarah whispered. "Go to the prep kitchen. Polish silverware. Stay out of sight." Sarah nodded, retreating through the swinging doors into the clamor of the main kitchen. The heat hit her like a physical blow. Pan seared, chefs shouted orders, steam rose in thick clouds. Chaos, but honest chaos. She found a corner near the dish pit, grabbed a basket of forks and a polishing cloth, and scrubbed the water spots from the metal. Her mind drifted back 3 years to a life that felt like it belonged to someone else entirely. To understand why Sarah Bennett, a genius linguist, was polishing forks in a basement in Manhattan. One had to understand the fall. 3 years ago, she had been sitting in a cafe in the 6th arrondissement of Paris, the table covered in books, Chomsky, Derrida, Foucault. She was 23, on a full scholarship, the darling of the linguistics department. Her future shimmered like gold. Talks of a tenure-track position in Geneva, a research grant in Tokyo. She spoke 4 languages fluently, could read 3 dead ones. She was happy. She was safe. Then the phone rang. It was her neighbor from back home in Ohio, Mrs. Gable. "Sarah, honey. It's your dad. You need to come home. It's bad." Her father, Thomas Bennett, was a carpenter. A strong, quiet man who had raised Sarah alone after her mother died when she was 6. He had worked double shifts sanding floors and building cabinets to pay for her undergraduate degree. He had never understood her obsession with languages, but when she got into the Sorbonne, his pride had shone so fiercely it was almost visible. "My girl," he'd tell his drinking buddies at the local bar, "is going to be a doctor. Not the kind that gives shots, the kind that knows things." The stroke had been massive. It happened on a job site. He had fallen from a ladder. When Sarah arrived at the hospital in Ohio, still carrying her suitcase with the Paris luggage tag, the doctor was blunt. Thomas had survived, but the damage was extensive. He was paralyzed on his right side. He had lost his fascia, the cruelest irony. The man who had worked so his daughter could master language had lost his own ability to speak. Then came the bills. Thomas had let his insurance lapse to help pay for Sarah's flight to France the previous year. The latter fall was deemed negligent by the company he was contracting for. They denied liability. The American healthcare system did not care about Sarah's PhD. It did not care about her potential. It cared about the $40,000 needed for the initial surgery, the $3,000 a month for the rehabilitation facility, the cost of medications. Sarah made the choice in a heartbeat. There was no other option. She couldn't leave him in a state facility with overworked nurses and thin sheets. He was her dad. She withdrew from the Sorbonne. She sold her books. She moved him to a specialized facility in upstate New York where the care was excellent but astronomical. She moved to the city to find work. Academia didn't pay fast money. Waiting tables at high-end restaurants did. If you hustled, worked double shifts, and tolerated the abuse of the rich, you could clear $6,000 a month. Every cent went to the dad fund. She lived in a closet-sized apartment in Queens with 2 roommates. She ate ramen. She walked everywhere to save subway fare. She stopped reading because it hurt too much to remember what she had lost. And tonight, Harrison Sterling had looked at her and seen a 0. A peasant. Sarah scrubbed at a fork so hard her knuckle turned white. The anger was a cold stone in her chest. It wasn't just the insult, it was the injustice. Harrison Sterling had likely never done a day of physical work in his life. He moved money around on a screen, destroyed companies for sport, and he had the audacity to judge her. A soft voice broke her reverie. What is it, Kevin?" Sarah asked, not looking up. Kevin, the teenage busboy, looked terrified. "Table 1. "Mr. Sterling," he squeaked. "He's asking for the manager. And he's asking for you. He says you stole his credit card." Sarah dropped the fork. It clattered loudly onto the stainless steel counter. What? Kevin's eyes were wide. He left his black card on the table when he went to the restroom, and now it's gone. He says you're the only one who was near the table. He's calling the police. Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. It was a lie. A vicious, petty, calculated lie. Harrison knew he couldn't get her fired for correcting his French. It would make him look weak, but theft? Theft was a career ender. Theft meant a criminal record. Theft meant losing her job, and if she lost her job, her father would be evicted from the care home within 30 days. Harrison wasn't just humiliating her anymore, he was trying to destroy her. "Where's Henderson?" she asked, untying her apron. "He's out there," Kevin said, voice trembling, trying to calm him down. "But Sterling is screaming, making a huge scene. Everyone is filming it." Sarah closed her eyes and drew a deep breath. She thought of her father's face, the way he looked at her when he couldn't find the words. He had taught her to be strong, to speak the truth, to never hide. She couldn't hide in the kitchen. If she did, she'd look guilty. "Okay," Sarah said. Her voice was steady, more steady than she felt. She smoothed her hair, straightened her blouse, picked up her apron and tied it tighter this time. She was ready. It was battle armor. "I'm coming out," she said. Sarah pushed through the swinging doors, leaving the steam and noise of the kitchen behind, and stepped back into the cool, treacherous air of the dining room. The scene was worse than she had imagined. Harrison Sterling stood in the middle of the restaurant, face twisted in a performance of righteous indignation. He was pointing a finger at Henderson, who looked like he was about to faint. Jessica sat at the table, head in her hands, utterly mortified. "I want her arrested," Harrison bellowed, his voice echoing off the vaulted ceiling. "I leave my card on the table for 2 minutes, and the help decides to give herself a bonus. This place is a den of thieves. I will have it shut down." Then he spotted Sarah emerging from the kitchen. A predator's grin flashed across his face. He pointed a manicured finger directly at her chest. "There she is," he shouted. "The thief! Search her. She probably has it in her pocket right now." Every eye in the restaurant turned to her, the wealthy patrons, the tourists, the staff. Phones went up, recording the spectacle. Sarah walked forward. She didn't look at the cameras. She didn't look at Henderson. She looked directly at Harrison. She stepped 5 feet away. "I did not take your card, Mr. Sterling," she said, calm, steady. "And you know that." "Oh, I know it." Harrison laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. "You're a waitress. You're desperate. I saw your shoes. I saw the way you looked at my watch. You people are all the same. You think the world owes you something because you failed at life." He stepped closer, invading her space. "Empty your pockets now, or I call the NYPD and they strip search you in the back of a squad car. Your choice, sweetheart." The room was deadly silent. The precipice. If she emptied her pockets, she submitted. If she refused, the police would come. But Harrison had made a critical mistake. In his arrogance, he had forgotten one thing. Sarah was not alone. He assumed that because she was a waitress, she had no allies. He assumed that in this room of wealth and power, his voice was the only one that mattered. He was wrong. From the corner table, table 4, a chair scraped loudly against the floor. The silver-haired gentleman who had been reading his newspaper stood. An older man, perhaps in his late 60s, wearing a worn but expensive tweed jacket. He had been nursing a single glass of cognac for an hour, watching, listening. He walked toward the commotion, not with the aggressive swagger of Harrison, but with the slow, terrifying authority of a man who owned the ground he walked on. "That will be enough." "Mr. Sterling," the man said. His voice was low, gravelly, with an unmistakable European accent. Harrison spun. "Who the hell are you?" "Mind your own business, Grandpa. This is between me and the thief." The older man stopped. He looked at Harrison with profound boredom, then at Sarah, offering her a slight bow of his head. "I believe," he said, turning back to Harrison, "that you are the one who is confused. And I believe that if you check the inside pocket of your jacket, the left one, which you patted nervously when you stood to start this charade, you will find your American Express card." Harrison froze. His hand twitched. "You're crazy," he thought. "I didn't put it there," he sneered. "Check it," the older man commanded. It was not a suggestion that the pressure in the room shifted. Cameras now pointed at him. With a scowl, he jammed his hand into the left interior pocket, purely to prove the old man wrong. His face slackened as he pulled his hand out. Between his fingers, the black titanium card. A gasp ran through the room. "Ah," the older man said dryly. "A miracle. It appears the laws of physics have suspended themselves to transport the card from the table to your pocket." Or perhaps you are simply a liar, attempting to destroy the lives of working women for sport. Harrison's face turned purple. I must have. It was a mistake. It was not a mistake, Sarah said, her voice ice cold. It was a tactic. Harrison looked around. The crowd had turned. Patrons who had once regarded Sarah with suspicion now looked at him with disgust. This service is terrible, muttered someone from the back of the room. Harrison yelled, trying to regain control. I'm leaving, Jessica. Let's go. He reached to grab Jessica's arm. Jessica stood up, clutching her purse. She looked at Harrison, then at Sarah. No, Jessica said. Harrison froze. What? No, she repeated, her voice shaking at first, then growing stronger. I'm not going anywhere with you. You're a monster, Harrison. A small, insecure, pathetic monster. She turned to Sarah. I'm so sorry for everything. Jessica, get in the car, Harrison snarled, his mask slipping. He looked dangerous. She is not going with you, the older gentleman said, stepping between them. You want to fight me, old man? Harrison stepped forward, fists clenched. The older man smiled a wolf smile. I do not fight, he said. I eviscerate. Tell me, Mr. Sterling, you work for Sterling Capital, do you not? Yeah, I'm the CEO. What's it to you? I am Lucien Valmont, the man said softly. The color didn't just drain from Harrison's face, it vanished. He looked as if he had seen a ghost. Valmont, Harrison whispered. As in Valmont International, the same, the man said. We are the majority shareholder in the bank that underwrites your hedge fund's leverage. In fact, I believe we hold about 60% of your debt. Harrison began to tremble. Valmont International was legendary in Europe. They were the whales who ate sharks like Harrison for breakfast, Lucien. Mr. Valmont, Harrison stammered, posture collapsing. I didn't know. It's an honor. Be quiet, Lucien said, pulling a phone from his pocket. I am going to make a call to my board in Zurich. I think it is time we call in your loans. All of them. Tonight. No. Harrison gasped. No, please. That would bankrupt me. You can't do that over a dinner dispute. I can, Lucien said calmly. Because I do not like your character. And I do not trust my money with men who lack it. Lucien turned to Sarah. Mademoiselle, he said, I apologize for the disturbance. And might I add, your analysis of the Shadow Marco was impeccable. That is indeed the 2015 vintage that requires patience. He turned back to Harrison. Get out, before I decide to buy your building and evict you from your own home. Harrison looked around. He was alone, defeated, publicly humiliated by a man with real power. He didn't say a word. He turned and fled the restaurant, the heavy oak doors slamming behind him. The dining room erupted into applause, but Sarah didn't hear it. She was looking at Lucien Valmont. The name rang a bell, not from finance, but from her past. Valmont. Suddenly, it clicked. The Valmont Foundation, the biggest grantor of linguistic grants in Europe. Lucien looked at her, eyes twinkling. You are Sarah Bennett, are you not? The one who wrote the thesis on semantic drifts in post-revolutionary France? Sarah's mouth fell open. You read my thesis? Read it? Lucien smiled. My dear, I was on the committee that was going to award you the Geneva Fellowship before you vanished. I have been looking for you for 3 years. The applause in Loroni eventually faded, replaced by a buzzing electric murmur. 5 minutes ago, Sarah Bennett had been a clumsy waitress accused of theft. Now she was the protagonist of a real-life drama that patrons would recount at cocktail parties for weeks, but Sarah couldn't feel triumph. She felt drained. The adrenaline dump left her trembling, hands clasping her apron as if it were the only thing holding her upright. Charles Henderson, the manager who had been ready to throw her to the wolves moments ago, suddenly appeared at her elbow. His face was a mask of frantic, sweaty obsequiousness. "Sarah." "My God, Sarah," Henderson whispered, voice high with nerves. "That was incredible. I had no idea you knew Mr. Valmont. Why didn't you tell me? We could have, I would have treated this whole situation differently." Sarah slowly turned her head to look at him. She saw him for what he was, a weather vane spinning whichever way the wind of power blew. "You were going to fire me, Charles," she said softly. "You were going to let the police take me." No. I was just de-escalating," Henderson stammered, wiping his forehead with a silk handkerchief. "It's protocol. But look, take the rest of the night off paid. Actually, take the week off paid. We value you so much here. Go away, Mr. Henderson." A deep voice cut in. Lucien Valmont had not sat back down. He stood by table 4, presence commanding the space. He gestured to the empty chair opposite him. "Miss Bennet," Lucien said, tone gentle but firm, "please sit. You have been on your feet for too long, and we have much to discuss." "I can't sit with a customer," Sarah said automatically, the rules of the service industry hardwired into her brain. "It's against policy." Lucien glanced at Henderson. "I am buying this restaurant's debt in the morning, along with Mr. Sterling's," he said smoothly. "I believe I can set the policy. Charles, bring Miss Bennet a glass of water and perhaps a glass of the vintage she so expertly defended." Henderson scrambled away like a frightened crab. Sarah looked at the chair, then at Lucien's kindly lined face. She untied her apron. It felt like shedding a skin. She sat. Before Lucien could speak, a shadow fell over the table. Sarah flinched, expecting Harrison to have returned. But it was Jessica. The woman in the red dress looked shaken. Her mascara was slightly smudged, but she looked more human, more real, than she had when she walked in. She clutched her purse with both hands. "I just wanted to say," Jessica began, her voice cracking. "Thank you, and I'm sorry. I should have said something sooner when he made fun of your French. I knew it was wrong. I was just scared of him." Sarah looked at her. She saw a woman trapped in the orbit of a narcissist, a woman who had just found her exit ramp. "You don't have to apologize," Sarah said. "He's a bully. Bullies make everyone afraid." Jessica nodded, wiping a tear from her cheek. She reached into her purse and pulled out a stack of cash, what looked like $500. She placed it on the table, then grabbed a napkin and scribbled a number on it. "This isn't a tip," Jessica said. "This is an apology, and that's my personal number. My father owns a gallery in Chelsea. We need people who understand art and history. If you ever want a job where you don't have to serve jerks like Harrison, call me. Seriously." Jessica gave Lucien a small, respectful nod and walked out of the restaurant, head held high. She took a cab alone, leaving Harrison Sterling's luxury SUV empty at the curb. Sarah stared at the napkin. The world was spinning too fast. A rare thing, Lucien mused, watching Jessica leave. Character is often found in the most unexpected moments. He turned his full attention to Sarah. The playfulness vanished from his eyes, replaced by a sharp, probing intelligence. "Now, Sarah, let us speak of the Sorbonne." Sarah took a sip of the water Henderson had nervously placed in front of her. "That was a long time ago, Mr. Valmont." 3 years is not a long time," Lucien corrected. "Not for a mind like yours. Do you know why I remember your name?" Sarah shook her head. "I was just a student. There were hundreds of us." "No," Lucien said, smiling. "There were hundreds of students. There was only one who wrote the semantic architecture of silence. What is left unsaid in post-revolutionary decrees? I read it. I admit I am a financier by trade, but a linguist by passion. My foundation funds 40% of the linguistic anthropology grants in Europe. Your paper, it challenged the established narrative. It was bold. It was brilliant. He leaned forward. We were ready to offer you the Geneva Fellowship, the most prestigious grant. We have fully funded research, a stipend, housing in Switzerland. And then, you vanished. The department head said you withdrew due to a family emergency. We tried to contact you, but your French number was disconnected. Sarah looked down at her hands. The shame of her poverty washed over her. I couldn't stay. My father, he had a stroke. I came back to Ohio. The bills. They were impossible. And so you came to New York, Lucien deduced. To make money quickly, Sarah whispered. The care facility is $6,000 a month. The medication, another $1,200. I didn't have a choice. I had to trade the library for the tray. Lucien nodded slowly. He didn't offer pity. He offered understanding. You sacrificed your future for his present. That is noble, Sarah, but it is a tragedy for the academic world. A mind like yours should not be worrying about cork fees and arrogant hedge fund managers. It's my life now, Sarah said, trying to sound strong. I'm managing, are you? Lucien gestured to her scuffed shoes, the dark circles under her eyes. You are surviving. You are not living. And you are certainly not utilizing your gifts. He reached into his jacket pocket, the same pocket where he had miraculously produced Harrison's card, and pulled out a business card. It wasn't flashy foil-stamped banker style. It was thick, cream-colored cardstock, simple black typography. The Valmont Foundation. Sarah, Lucien said, I did not come to New York for the food. I came because we are opening a new wing of the foundation here in Manhattan. We are digitizing and translating the private letters of the 18th century French aristocracy. Millions of documents that have never been studied. We need a director of archival interpretation. He slid the card across the table. I don't need a manager, Lucien said. I have plenty of those. I need someone who understands the soul of the language. I need someone who can read a letter from 1793 and tell me if the writer was afraid or hopeful based on the conjugation of a verb. I need you. Sarah stared at the card. It felt hot to the touch, Mr. Val. She said, voice trembling. I can't leave New York. My father is in a facility upstate. I visit him every Sunday. And academic jobs, they don't pay enough. I need the cash tips. I have debt. I have so much debt. Lucien raised an eyebrow. Do you think I would offer you a position that pays less than waitressing? He took a pen from his pocket and wrote a figure on the back of the napkin Jessica had left. He turned it around. It was a base salary, $185,000 per year. Sarah stopped breathing. That was 3 times what she made here, even on good nights. Plus benefits, Lucien added casually. Full medical, dental. And because the Valmont Group owns a controlling interest in the St. Jude's Neurological Institute in Westchester. He paused, letting the name sink in. Sarah gasped. St. Jude's, the best facility in the country. The place the doctors had said could actually help her father regain his speech, but they didn't take Medicaid. And the waiting list was 5 years long. I can have your father transferred there by Monday, Lucien said. Covered entirely by the company insurance plan. He will get the best physical and speech therapy in the world. And since the institute is only 40 minutes from the city, you can visit him on Tuesday evenings as well as Sundays. Tears welled in Sarah's eyes. They spilled over, tracking through her cheap concealer. This wasn't just a job offer. This was a lifeline. This is the end of the drowning. Why? She choked out. Why would you do this for me? Lucien leaned back, expression serious. Because tonight you stood up to a man who thought his money made him a god. You used your mind as a sword. You reminded me that dignity cannot be bought. I invest in people, Sarah, and I am betting on you. He stood, Report to the address on that card Monday morning at 9 a.m. Wear comfortable shoes. We have a lot of reading to do. 6 months later, the library of the Valmont Foundation in Manhattan was a sanctuary of silence and light. Dust motes danced in the sunbeams filtering through the high windows, illuminating rows of ancient leather-bound manuscripts. Sarah Bennett sat at a large mahogany desk, wearing a blazer that fit perfectly and shoes that didn't hurt. She examined a faded letter from 1794 through a magnifying glass, deciphering the looping, frantic script of a French contest awaiting trial. "Director Bennett," said her assistant. "A bright young grad student from Columbia named David." "Yes, David?" "We have the translation for the DeMercy letters ready for your review. And there's a visitor in the lobby. He says he knows you." Sarah frowned. "Did he give a name?" "No, but he's in a wheelchair, and he's with a nurse." Sarah's heart leapt. She stood, abandoning the 18th century for the present, and walked quickly down the hallway into the glass-walled lobby. There, sitting in a sleek motorized wheelchair, was Thomas Bennett. He looked different. The gray pallor of the state facility was gone, replaced by a healthy flush. He wore a clean flannel shirt. Beside him stood a nurse from St. Jude's. "Dad," Sarah said, slowing as she approached. "Is everything okay? Is it an emergency?" Thomas looked at her. His eyes, once clouded with confusion and frustration, were clear. He lifted his left hand, his good hand, and reached for her. He took a deep breath, mouth working the muscles strained with effort from 5 months of intensive speech therapy. "Sarah," he rasped. The word was rough, like gravel, but distinct. Sarah froze. It was the first time she had heard him say her name in 3 years. "Dad." Tears sprang to her eyes. Thomas squeezed her hand. He took another breath, looked around the lobby at the marble, at the books, at the life his daughter had reclaimed, and then back at her. "Proud," he said. "So too." "Proud," he added. Sarah fell to her knees, wrapping her arms around him, burying her face in his shoulder. She wept, not from exhaustion or fear, but from a joy so pure it felt as if it might break her. She had gotten her life back. She had gotten her father back. And somewhere in the city, Harrison Sterling was probably shouting at a waiter or obsessively checking his stock portfolio as it plummeted forever. Chasing a sense of worth he would never find. He had his millions. Perhaps, but Sarah had the words. And as she had proven that night at Leroni, words were the only things that truly lasted. That is how a waitress with a PhD took down a billionaire without raising her voice. It's a reminder that true class isn't about what you wear or what you order. It's about how you treat people. Harrison. Sterling learned the hard way that you should never judge a book by its cover, especially when that book can read you in 3 different languages. Sarah didn't just win an argument. She reclaimed her destiny. If you enjoyed this story of justice served cold, with a side of perfect French, please hit the like button. It really helps the channel. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder that knowledge is power. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a story. What would you have done in Sarah's shoes? Let me know in the comments below.